Okay, in the interest of time, I think we'll get started. Uh, Welcome, everybody. We appreciate you signing up for and participating in today's webinar. I am Tara King. I'm a Senior Project Director at the American Association for the Advancement of Science, or AAAS for short. AAAS is the world's largest general science association and the publisher of the Science family of journals. I serve as the Center Coordinator for the AAAS S-STEM Resource and Evaluation Center, which is abbreviated as the S-STEM REC. Through the S-STEM REC, AAAS is happy to facilitate this opportunity to provide insight and help with your questions as you prepare to submit a 2025 S-STEM grant proposal. Next slide, please. Before I jump in, I want to go over a few housekeeping items. You may ask your questions at any time throughout this webinar. It's never too early to do so. Please use the Q&A feature to type in your questions. In addition, we've enabled upvoting. So if you see a question that aligns with something you're thinking about or a question that you'd also like to hear the answer to, please give it a thumbs up. We will prioritize getting answers to questions that have the most upvotes. Also, please keep an eye on not only the open question tabs, but the answered question tab, as some of the more straightforward questions might be answered directly there. The slides being presented today can be found on the AAAS S-STEM REC website. If you'd like to follow along with the slides on your computer, you can download them now. We'll put this link in the chat. Also, on the same webpage, recording of today's webinar will be posted when it becomes available. We're happy to have 2 American Sign Language interpreters joining us today. In addition, we're pleased to have a live transcriptioner providing closed captioning. Our thanks to these individuals for helping us make the information presented in this webinar more widely accessible. We hope that the webinar runs smoothly for you today, but please, if you have any technical difficulties or questions, contact my colleague, Jamila Blake, in the chat or send her an email at jblake@AAAS.org. Finally, we would really appreciate your feedback on today's webinar. We'd like to know how useful it was for you, any suggestions you have to improve it, and a short survey will appear when you leave the webinar. But if you're unable to take it upon exiting today, a link to the survey will be emailed to you tomorrow. We thank you in advance for sharing your thoughts to help us improve our offerings for you. Next slide. For anyone who is just joining us, hello and welcome. Again, my name is Tara King, and I am the Center Coordinator of the AAAS S-STEM Resource and Evaluation Center, or REC for short. I'm thrilled to facilitate this proposal preparation webinar as part of the REC's work. The REC's work is made possible by funding from the National Science Foundation. This webinar aims to support individuals who are working to submit a 2025 S-STEM grant proposal. We're pleased to have a panel of current S-STEM PIs from various institutional contexts with us today to provide their insights and help answer your questions. Let me provide a quick overview of today's agenda. We'll first share a bit about the AAAS S-STEM Resource and Evaluation Center and direct you to other resources that can help you with your S-STEM proposal. Unfortunately, current NSF program directors are not able to join us today. However, I will share brief highlights of the 2025 S-STEM solicitation that are important for you to know about. Then we'll begin our panel discussion after that. We have 4 fantastic PIs of current S-STEM awards from all tracks and from a wide range of institution types, including a community college, an HBCU, an MSI, and a PWI. After that, we will spend the bulk of our time together discussing your questions with the panel. Remember to use the Q&A function to ask your questions. You could type them in at any time. You can also upvote others' questions, and we'll prioritize addressing those that are upvoted the most and do our best to get through all the questions asked today. Also, be sure to keep an eye on both the answered and open question tabs. Next slide. Before I jump into the content of today's webinar, it's important for me to share a brief disclaimer with you. This material is based upon work supported by the National Science Foundation under grant number 2224093 Any opinions, findings, interpretations, conclusions, or recommendations expressed in this material are those of its authors and do not represent the views of the AAAS Board of Directors, the Council of AAAS, AAAS's membership, or the National Science Foundation. Moreover, I want to share upfront that AAAS does not have any information about if or how recent executive actions and memos from the administration may impact the 2025 NSF S-STEM solicitation. If we become aware of any relevant information, we'll be sure to share it with the S-STEM community as soon as possible. Next slide. So some of you might be wondering, what is the AAAS S-STEM REC? AAAS is a grantee of NSF. So in October 2022, through a competitive proposal process, AAAS received the award to manage the S-STEM Resource and Evaluation Center, or REC for short. The S-STEM REC is a new type of investment by NSF to create a greater infrastructure, build community, coordinate work, and synthesize findings across the entire NSF S-STEM portfolio of projects. The REC's work focuses on promoting the exchange of ideas, resources, opportunities, and knowledge about effective strategies and practices to increase the number of talented, low-income students who obtain degrees and careers in STEM. The activities of the REC work across multiple levels. For instance, we support the effectiveness of the S-STEM portfolio through publishing S-STEM outcomes and impacts reports. We build the capacity of current and prospective S-STEM awardees through webinars like this one. And we support S-STEM scholars' STEM persistence and professional development through convening an annual in-person scholars meeting. We welcome you to visit our website to learn more about the REC and join our mailing list to stay updated and informed. Next slide. So while the REC is managed by AAAS in coordination with NSF, we cannot reach our goals without the significant contributions of our full team. This slide shows all of the organizations we partner with to carry out the work of the REC. Next slide. We want to make you aware of a set of complimentary webinars that one of our partners, MN Associates Inc., is hosting on the topics of developing research and evaluation plans, as well as developing and using a logic model or theory of change. These webinars provide additional guidance for your proposal preparation work. We'll place registration links and links to materials in the chat for you. Also, MN Associates Inc. has created a useful guidebook on preparing research and evaluation plans for NSF S-STEM grant proposals. This new resource is now available for download on the REC website, and we encourage you to check it out. Finally, if you have specific questions related to drafting your research and evaluation plans for your S-STEM proposal, you can reach out to the MN Associates Inc. team by completing a request form with your specific inquiry. We've posted a link to this form in the chat as well. Please note that the S-STEM REC is promoting consultation with MN Associates Inc. as they are a partner of the REC, but this does not constitute an endorsement of them as evaluators by the National Science Foundation. And next slide. We want to know that today's webinar is one in a series. You're welcome to join the REC's remaining S-STEM proposal preparation webinar on February 19th. This session will include a different set of panelists who are all former NSF program directors. See the link posted in the chat to register and for more information. Additionally, NSF has scheduled to host drop-in office hours. However, I'm aware that NSF has canceled all of the previous dates in the series. I'm not sure if the remaining 2 dates will occur or not, but the link to register has also been posted in the chat in case you want to check it out. And finally, the NSF website has extremely useful resources, next slide please, for you to refer to as you prepare your S-STEM grant proposal. These include the full text of the 2025 S-STEM program solicitation, a recording of an overview webinar that explains the solicitation requirements in detail, and an FAQ document that answers the most commonly asked questions about the solicitation. All three links have been posted in the chat, and we strongly encourage you to review them. And next slide. So I'm going to switch gears now and provide some important highlights about the 2025 S-STEM solicitation. So again, I encourage you to check out those resources that I just talked about, the solicitation checks, the overview webinar, and the FAQ document for more details. But I wanted to make sure that the most important information about all tracks are highlighted for you today. The submission deadline is March 4th for all tracks. And to our knowledge, that has not changed. It's up on the NSF website as March 4th. So we are happy to help you prepare for your proposals to submit for the March 4th deadline. Next slide, please. So for anyone interested in submitting a proposal to the S-STEM program, it's important to be aware of the program's overarching goals. The primary goal of the S-STEM program is to provide scholarships to academically talented domestic low-income students with unmet need who are pursuing an S-STEM eligible degree. In addition to scholarship support, S-STEM projects should include cohort building and faculty mentoring, among other evidence-based activities to provide curricular and co-curricular support to their scholars. The selection and structure of these activities should be informed by their potential impact on the retention, success, and graduation rates of the supported scholars. For any novel approaches that will be tested during the course of the project, please note that these approaches should align appropriately with institutional context and resources. Proposals should also include explicit plans to disseminate findings that result from these tested activities. Next slide. Since the pursuit of a degree is central to S-STEM program goals, proposals should focus on helping scholars reach the milestone of graduating with a degree in an S-STEM eligible field. Upon graduation, projects should facilitate scholars' entry into the STEM workforce or the advancement of their education in STEM. This educational advancement can include transfer from an associate to a baccalaureate degree program or advancement from baccalaureate to a graduate program in STEM, depending on what degrees the scholars are completing during the project. Next slide. In addition to providing scholarship support to academically talented low-income scholars, the S-STEM program seeks to advance our understanding of how to better serve these students beyond financial support. Analysis of student success, curriculum pathways, inter or intra-institutional collaborations, and institutional needs assessments are all lines of investigation that have potential to strengthen a proposal. Next slide. So this slide contains a summary of the changes that have been made within the 2025 solicitation. The deadline for all tracks is March 4th and will fall on the first Tuesday in March thereafter. Collaborative planning grants are no longer accepted as part of this submission deadline. The maximum request for track 1 is now $2 million, and scholarships must constitute at least 50% of the total budget request. Additional track 1 requirements are now in effect, which will be shown in later slides. For all proposal tracks, the required data regarding the pool of prospective scholars and the evaluation logic model must be included as supplementary documents and are no longer part of the project description. Next slide. Many of the updates made in previous solicitations remain in effect. The maximum annual scholarship amounts for undergraduates is still $15,000, and the maximum annual scholarship for graduate students is $20,000. The maximum duration for scholarship support is 5 years per each respective degree. S-STEM remains a last dollar scholarship, and scholarships should meet a student's unmet need up to the maximum allowable amount noted above. The Office of Financial Aid must be involved in the determination of scholars' income eligibility, unmet need, and scholarship amounts. The Office of Financial Aid must also provide an institutional definition of low income that will be used to determine S-STEM scholar eligibility. Also, in order to demonstrate project viability, proposers should provide data that show sufficient enrollment of students in the proposed disciplines and degree programs to meet the stated goals of the proposal. Next slide. This slide shows the common requirements of all tracks. A proposal to any track should include a literature review to support the inclusion of any proposed evidence-based activities. An institutional needs assessment can also be used to justify these activities. All proposals should describe plans to develop and support student cohorts and provide S-STEM scholars with faculty mentors. It's also advisable to describe how mentors will be trained to serve the scholars. Since such activities cannot be required as a condition for receiving scholarship funds, it's recommended to consider how student engagement in these activities might be maximized. Additionally, proposals should describe a clear and specific evaluation plan that will be executed by an evaluator who is external to the project. This does not necessarily require that the evaluator be external to the institution, however. Next slide. Track 1, or the Institutional Capacity Building track of the S-STEM program, is limited to institutions that have not had active funding from the NSF S-STEM or STEP programs in the 5 years prior to the submission deadline. So with respect to the upcoming March 4th deadline, any S-STEM award with an end date later than March 3rd, 2020, disqualifies that previously awarded institution from applying to track 1 of this upcoming S-STEM competition. You can explore the NSF Awards database to determine if or when your institution has had a past S-STEM or STEP award. Proposal budgets have a maximum allotted request of $2 million, and projects can have a duration of up to 6 years. At least 50% of the total requests must be allocated to scholarships. And this is a departure from past track 1 proposal requirements. Principal investigators for a track 1 proposal must be a STEM faculty member currently teaching in one of the S-STEM eligible disciplines, being served by the proposed scholarship funds, or a STEM administrator who has taught in one of those same fields. The requirement that the STEM administrator has to have taught in the past 2 years has been eliminated. If not serving as a PI, a STEM administrator, which is a department head or above, should also be a member of the project leadership team. And faculty members from all departments included in the proposal should be playing a role in the project, either as a co-PI, senior personnel, or a scholar mentor. Next slide. New to this year's solicitation, Track 1 proposals must now include plans for an initial planning or self-study period of 6 to 12 months. Scholars cannot be selected nor supported during this initial period. In keeping with the goal of Track 1, projects can engage in various activities to strengthen the position of the project team or the institution to more effectively support S-STEM scholars once scholarship begins. The plans for this initial planning period should be described in a supplementary document titled Track 1 Planning that includes defined activities, a clear timeline, and designated roles for project leadership team members. Next slide. Now to Track 2. Track 2, or the Implementation Projects track, is open to any single institution of higher education accredited in the US. If student transfer or advancement to graduate school are part of the project, partnering institutions could be included as subawards. Proposal budgets for Track 2 have a maximum allowed request of $2 million, and projects can have a duration of up to 6 years. At least 60% of the total request must be allocated to scholarships. Similar to Track 1, the PI for a Track 2 proposal must be a STEM faculty member currently teaching in one of the S-STEM eligible disciplines being served by the proposed scholarship funds, or a STEM administrator who has taught in one of those same fields. Again, the requirement that the STEM administrator has to have taught in the past 2 years has been eliminated. If not serving as a PI, a STEM administrator, department head or above, should also be a member of the project leadership team. As in Track 1, faculty members from all departments included in a Track 2 proposal should be playing a role in the project, either as a co-PI, senior personnel, or as a scholar mentor. Next slide. So talk a bit about generation of knowledge. Track 1 and 2 proposals are meant to be scholarship intensive, meaning that formal research activities are not required in these tracks. The focus here should be on supporting the successful degree completion of scholars and their transition into the STEM workforce or advancing their studies in STEM. Proposals can use non-scholarship funds to provide a variety of additional supports for scholars, including research experiences, conference travel, or internships. Track 1 and Track 2 proposals should seek to advance knowledge about scholar success through their project evaluation plan and should include substantive plans for dissemination. Next slide. Track 3, or the Interinstitutional Consortia track of the S-STEM program, is open to any U.S. higher ed institution. Proposal submissions can be structured through subawards or multiple collaborative projects. Combined project budgets have a maximum allowed request of $5 million, and projects can have a duration of up to 6 years. At least 60% of the total request must be allocated to scholarships. Track 3 proposals should include strong and mutually beneficial collaborations across all participating institutions. The PI of a Track 3 proposal must be either a faculty member currently teaching in one of the proposed S-STEM eligible disciplines, a STEM administrator, again, department head or above, or a researcher whose expertise is in institutional, educational, or social science research in higher education. Next slide. So in contrast to the other tracks, Track 3 projects should engage in high-quality research to advance understanding of how to adapt, implement, and scale up effective evidence-based practices to foster more positive outcomes for low-income students in STEM. This research should be led by PIs, co-PIs, or senior personnel who are faculty with expertise in social science or educational research. The faculty involved in the research efforts of the proposal cannot act as external evaluators for the project. Various theoretical frameworks and methodological approaches can be used to inform research projects within Track 3 proposals. Next slide. Okay, I know that was a lot of information, but I hope this very quick run through of these important details for all tracks has been helpful for you and in your proposal preparation. Again, please refer to the text solicitation and the FAQ documents and recorded webinars posted by NSF for more details. And next slide. It's my pleasure to welcome our panelists joining us today. All 4 individuals are currently S-STEM PIs of awards in various tracks at different institutional contexts. We don't have time today for them to talk about their S-STEM projects in detail, but in the chat, we've included links to their NSF award pages if you'd like more information. Please continue writing your questions in the Q&A box and upvote questions that have been asked. We will give each panelist a few minutes now to briefly introduce themselves and provide their response to an opening question. This opening question that we're curious about is, how does your institutional context provide unique assets for your S-STEM award? And we'll start with Laura Berry from North Arkansas College. Laura.
Hi, thank you, Tara. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
All right, great. Well, wonderful to be here with all of you. I'm at North Arkansas College, a 2-year college in North Central Arkansas. And I have been here forever, it seems like, and started as math science faculty member, been involved in institutional research, currently dean of several STEM areas as well as health professions, and have been involved in several NSF grants. But this is our first S-STEM grant. We are a couple of years into it, and North Ark we are in a rural area, so a community college in a rural area of Northwest Arkansas. Our community is about 13,000, but we are a near neighbor of the Northwest Arkansas corridor, and that's the economic driver of Arkansas. That's the home of Walmart, J.B. Hunt, Tyson's. So it's as though we can see those opportunities just over the hill. And we are desperately trying to make sure our students and our community have those opportunities, and we can be part of the economic landscape of the bigger area. As far as our institutional context, we have kind of a unique culture at our college. So 2-year rural college, but faculty and staff here, I don't want to say we don't have silos, because we do. We're kind of like a mildly dysfunctional family sometimes, but faculty and staff work very well together. We know each other pretty well. It's pretty easy for us to make changes, for us to put together projects, probably easier than larger schools to design a plan and pull people together across disciplines and across roles, whether it's faculty or staff. Because of our small class sizes, then our faculty know their students pretty well and can easily help mentor from within the classroom. So the unique assets we bring, I think, are a bit more of a family-oriented faculty and staff, and really able to pitch in and put together a project and work closely with our students. And I'll be glad to add to that as you want me to, Tara.
Thank you, Laura. Next, we'll move to Gloria Regisford from Prairie View A&M University. Hi, Gloria.
Yes, good afternoon. Still good morning here for me. But yes, I am the Regents Professor of Biology at Prairie View A&M University. And I am so excited to be here and to answer this question, highlight how Prairie View A&M University provides a unique and powerful environment for an S-STEM award. First of all, we're an HBCU, and we recently, I think 2 years ago, we're now classified as an R2 institution. At the time when I was developing my grant, we were, of course, just graduate master's institution. So we've moved up to R2. I would like to think it's because of this S-STEM, but of course I can't say that. The mission has been and is to support students from underrepresented backgrounds. So, of course, our commitment to serving underrepresented students in STEM aligns with the S-STEM program's goal of increasing retention in these fields. If you look at our logo, it's actually on the website, it says that excellent lives here. I just love that. And of course, like every other university, we promote academic excellence, but we also uniquely promote strong mentorship at several levels. I think that has been really the mantra in which Prairie View stands. We nurture our students. We really we will want to promote strong mentorship, giving faculty the opportunity to mentor students, research mentors, and even peer mentors. And of course, undergraduate research is also very important to us. We think that undergraduate research will help to ensure student success. In addition, we have other NSF funded initiatives, and quite a few of our faculty, we're supposed to be engaged in research. So it also gives our students hands-on experience to help prepare them for, of course, graduate school and maybe for the workforce. We want them to stay, of course, in STEM. We also have collaborations with R1 research institutions. We like 50 miles northwest of Houston from the Texas Medical Center, the largest medical center in the world. So we have collaborations with them. We also have collaborations with national labs and industry in Houston and in Texas, so to speak. Of course, they provide opportunities for students to do research. So we encourage our students to go on and do summer research internships so that they can see how to apply what they learn in the classroom, of course, to what's happening in the real world. I'm sure this may not be unique. Is the time for my time up?
Yeah, we're gonna move on to Mark,
Okay.
just in the interest of time, but
Okay,
we really
sure, no
appreciate
problem.
you highlighting these things.
Yeah, no worries.
We'll
But
give you more
yeah,
time
good.
to
Thank you.
highlight some more later on. But yeah, Mark, who runs
Sure, no
the
worries.
Track 3 grant at Florida International University. Your thoughts on how your context contributes to your STEM?
Good afternoon, everyone. So I'm Mark Weiss. I'm a distinguished professor of computer science at Florida International University, where I've been for probably about as long as Laura's been in Arkansas. And We have, as Tara said, we are now on our second Track 3 grant. And so we partner with University of Central Florida and the University of South Florida, which are obviously also in Florida. So together, we are three very large state institutions. In that sense, we have a lot in common. We're all R1 institutions. We have relatively low tuition, and we're located in the three largest metropolitan areas in the state of Florida. We each have a little bit of different institutional characteristics. So Florida International University, for example, is a Hispanic serving institution. Majority of our students are Hispanic, whereas UCF is also a Hispanic serving institution, but closer to that 25% line that would be getting you designation. And I think USF is not quite there yet. So we have different characteristics. Since we're a Track 3 grant, we also have to do research. And the fact that we have three large institutions that have some common aspects and also some differences really makes that research a lot easier to do, especially given our numbers. We're in computer science. Computer science is a very rapidly growing major on many campuses. So in addition to being at large universities, we have large students populations. We have large classes, so we're kind of different than some of what we've heard before. And in those contexts, sometimes students can get lost. And so our programs are looking to make sure there's a lot of extracurricular support for those students and to try to do some research to see what works.
Thank you, Mark. And we also have Mindy Capaldi from James Madison University.
Hi, everyone. As Tara said, I'm Mindy Capaldi. I'll give a little bit of the background and then get into that institutional context. I've had the pleasure of being involved with S-STEM, the S-STEM program in a few different ways and contexts. I'm currently a PI of a Track 2 at James Madison University, and I took over that position last summer when our previous PI retired. But about a year and a half ago, I ended a stint at the NSF where I was a program officer for S-STEM and was a co-lead of the S-STEM program. And then prior to that, I got to be a co-PI on an S-STEM, a Track 1 S-STEM project at Valparaiso University in Indiana. And so I have two different institutional contexts there, where Valparaiso University was a smaller private institution. Our project there was focused on bringing in commuter students along with residential students and kind of bringing them together as a cohort. And they did 4 years of undergraduate research. That project covered all STEM disciplines except for engineering for the most part. Now at James Madison, this is an institution that's a public institution. There's some overlap with what Gloria was saying about Prairie View. We recently became an R2 institution in a few years ago as well. So we have this kind of research focus that's growing, especially undergrad research. There's a strong foundation of that we use in our S-STEM project. We're a primarily undergraduate institution still, and so the focus is still largely on undergraduates, especially in my college, which is the College of Science and Math. And our S-STEM project, again, covers all STEM disciplines in my college, which excludes engineering and, in this case, computer science. So it covers a variety of disciplines. And I think that's been something I've really enjoyed across my S-STEM projects that I've been involved with, is having kind of the variety of disciplines that are involved. And I saw a question in the chat about that, how do you get the cohort together if they're coming from different programs? So I thought I'd go ahead and kind of bring that in here too. One of the things that we do is have a transition week where they get to come to campus early and get together and they get to know each other. And then they also stay together in some seminar classes after that. And so I think that's building on a strength of our institution, that we're able to bring together these students across STEM fields. We also build on our undergrad research foundation by providing them with a 4-week undergrad research experience the summer after their first year. So it's kind of an intro into research sort of experience. And we have a lot of research going on in the summer anyway, so we just kind of add it or integrate into what's already going on campus. And that seems to work out pretty well. And I think I will
Yeah.
stop there and
Thank
let you move
you.
on, Tara.
And thank you for incorporating a question that you saw in the chat already into your response. Again, reminder, continue to place their questions in the chat. If you have a question towards a specific panelist, please feel free to address in your text your question to that panelist. Otherwise, I'll kind of pose them as open questions to the panel. We do have one question that was asked to Dr. Regisford. So this person is curious, how do you get all of your students to engage in research if they can't be required to do so by the S-STEM program?
Oh, so we sort of included the fact that they should do research. So that was, I think, different back then. In 2019, I think, was the solicitation different? I don't know, but we pushed research. So even though we're not successful in getting 100% of them engaged in research, it's really amazing to see that a lot. I mean, we have at least 95% of the students engage in research. And it's just something that we've been doing for a long time, that we form teams. So we get the students to do research in teams. So I guess when they see their peer doing research, and like, I want to do that too. And so that's how we get them engaged.
Thank you for that. Open up to insights for
Mhm.
other panelists. So how do you get how do you get your students, ensure their engagement in activities if they're technically not required by the S-STEM program? Go ahead, Mark. I see you unmuted.
Sure. Well, I would say in computer science, perhaps it's a little bit easier in the sense that some of the activities that we have involve resume writing workshops. We also are trying to encourage students to work with faculty who have active research grants and even pursue grad school. And so since we have a variety of different pathways, whether it be internships, research, just professional development, we seem to be able to get students to do ones that are appropriate. I think it's important the activities really be very well thought out and valuable, because it only takes, one bad activity for the students to then say, well, I don't really want to start coming to these anymore. And the reason I say it's easier for computer science is because we might have like say a resume writing workshop, and then we have companies coming, right away. So there's kind of a pressing need that they'll see signs up that one of these well-known companies is coming to campus next week, and we happen to have a workshop on that scheduled for our students, and so they're going to be there.
Thank you. Any other thoughts by Laura or Mindy?
I don't have much to add other than what, similar to what Mark said. Most of our activities are helping support them to be successful students and successful scholars. Probably the biggest thing that helps is encouragement from the faculty or a phone call from one of us on the team. And then we have to recognize that not everybody will participate in everything, but I think the goal is to try to stay in touch and provide those opportunities. And I want to say that Mindy, you were our PI when we got the grant, and you were so helpful. I really appreciate it.
And that's nice to hear, Laura. Thank you. And I'll just build on what she said, that sometimes people won't be able to go to everything. And to me, that's okay. Like, you don't know what family, work, whatever other responsibilities are going on. And so don't, you know, maybe they don't need to come to every single event or opportunity, and that can be okay. As long as they're making progress toward degree, that's what you want.
Thank you. And I know there's like a lot of questions with given the uncertainty of recent executive orders around DEIA frameworks and things like that. So I just wanted to, sorry to put you on the spot, Mindy, but I'm going to direct the question to you since if you have any insight, given that you were very recently a program officer. If not, that's okay too, because I honestly don't have insight of should people be modifying their proposals or their projects in any way, given the recent executive orders.
I unfortunately don't have a clear answer for this, and I'm not sure that even the people that are still working at the NSF really know at this point. I mean, they know more than me. But I think at least my view of everything is I'm still kind of in a wait and see mode with what happens to NSF overall and specifically to the S-STEM program. But I mean, at this point, this
Uh-oh, did Mindy freeze? I think she froze, unless it's just my computer. But I think she was heading towards saying that people should continue to propose their projects as planned and in alignment with the current 2025 S-STEM solicitation, as you know, there have been no official changes or directions given to us to modify anything. So I think that it's best for people to continue to fulfill the requirements of the 2025 solicitation as written, and aim for that March 4th deadline as written. But yeah, I wish we all kind of knew and had less uncertainty, but unfortunately, I don't think anybody does. So I think going back to more of the solicitation focused questions, somebody asked, can abbreviated evaluation plan, logic models, and data tables summarizing the scholar pool be included in the project description as well as supplementary documents, or must it be included into the supplementary document only, I guess is the question. So I think I'll kind of take a stab at this. I think since Mindy kind of jumped off. To my understanding, you have very limited pages. It's 15 pages of proposal text. And yeah, welcome other panelists to join in, because I have not written an S-STEM proposal myself. But I know that you're very limited space in the narrative. So you want to be very thoughtful about what you include in that narrative, and then put things that you feel aren't essential to your narrative in your supplemental document section. Laura, I saw you shaking your head. Would you agree with this? You're muted.
I was just shaking my head agreeing.
So other panelists have advice of what you include in your narrative versus what you include in your supplemental documents.
I mean, we put the part about the pool of applicants. We put that in the main proposal, not in the supplemental document. It's a table, and we had, we included the number of students in the majors, what we thought their expected financial need was, based on consulting with a financial aid office during the submission, to get an idea of what we thought would be going on once the grant would be awarded. We didn't take up too much real estate in doing it, and felt it had to be there. And the other thing about a table is you do have latitude. Most of the proposal has to be in certain fonts, a 10-point font. But tables can have smaller fonts if you need to make it fit.
Oh, good tip.
That also helps you use up a little bit less space. I mean, it can't be 2-point font, but you can
Mhm.
drop it down to 9 or even 8 if it's good and legible still.
Thanks for those tips there. So the 2025 solicitation requires the PI to participate in new PI professional development hosted by the S-STEM Rec. Somebody asked, for budget purposes, can you clarify if this is a conference or webinars? I think this could be either. We do have an annual S-STEM Scholars meeting that we host every year. And on an every other year basis, we are hosting a Scholars and PI meeting combined. So I believe it's smart for you to budget in their funds to travel on an every other year basis to the PI meeting if you'd like to send staff and PIs there. However, the S-STEM Scholars meeting, AAAS covers the participation of scholars 100% using the S-STEM Rec grant. So if that's helpful for you. The rec hosts webinars, virtual engagements all throughout the year, which of course you don't have to budget for. But if you do want participation in the every other year PI meeting, please consider that into your budget. And again, you don't have to budget funds for scholars to attend the scholars meeting since the rec does fully cover that. Let's see what other questions we have. So
Again,
go ahead, Laura. Do you have
would you
something?
say again what the specific question was about tables and charts? And was the question what was included in the description versus supplemental, or how to shrink the tables to make up more real estate? Or do we just want to move on from that? I finally pulled up my proposal.
Oh, happy for people to share insights. I think also, do you have other tips for what to include in the body versus the supplemental documents and how you manage that space?
No, nothing magical, but yes, we included in the body information, that was requested about predicted number of S-STEM scholars in our area. Again, being a small school, we really had to show that we had enough predicted success rates, and those were our main areas of emphasis. We did have S-STEM logic model included and a very brief timeline of activities, and those were our main charts, as well as a model showing what we were planning for a mentoring network.
So Mindy, you might have insight on this, given that your previous experience as program officer.
Yeah, and sorry I left earlier. The power went out at my house, but we seem to be
No
back now.
worries.
Who knows? We're having winter weather, so I don't know if it's related to that. I think the motivation for moving more things to supplementary documents was probably just that there's so much going on in S-STEM projects that it's really hard to describe it all in 15 pages. And so some things like a logic model, which can take up a big amount of space, often is put in as a table or some such, moving that into supplementary documents just gives you a little more freedom in what you're able to describe. And you could still reiterate some of what's in the logic model in your project description, but I wouldn't include the whole thing if it's already there as a supplementary document, which is, I think, what they want now. It would maybe be describing more of what else you're doing in terms of your evaluation, what sort of data you're collecting, what sort of analysis, what sort of dissemination. And then something like the table of scholar info, which is going to include your numbers and your potential pools, and probably things like retention rates, GPAs, unmet need across the disciplines, the programs that would be eligible. That can also take up a lot of room. And it's nice to have it as a supplementary document so it's easy to find, but you can still talk about what you're seeing in that table in your project description, what sort of patterns you're seeing in retention. Maybe you're going to propose a specific intervention because you're seeing that students in a certain program are not being retained as high as other programs or something along those lines. You still want to interpret what you see and use that to inform your scholarship amounts, your cohort size, but I wouldn't have the exact same table in the project description, again, since it's already in supplementary docs. It does look like now something that was a supplementary document, which was describing the regional or national need for the disciplines included, is now going back into the project description or going into the project description, so that you'll want to say some more about in the 15 pages.
Thank you for that. Related to the supplemental documents, somebody asked, how important is it to include a timeline for implementation in the proposal relative to the required components? Any thoughts about including a timeline?
Could I just say that we always are fighting to fit everything in the 15 pages. I don't know how important it is, but we managed to come up with a dissemination timeline that I'm looking at it, and I would say it takes up maybe a sixth of a page. And it was not as detailed as in others. We did it by year. So we would list the year, and then underneath it, we listed the main activities that we plan to do. And it took up minimal space, unlike what we've done in other proposals. So I can't speak to the importance, but I can speak to the fact that you can come up with something that doesn't take up nearly as much room as you might think.
Thanks for that.
Yes, and I agree with you, Laura. And I think Mark did mention that you could actually use a slightly smaller font and get away with it in a table. So I always include a table of a timeline.
So switching gears about, somebody has a question about what criteria are you using to establish academically talented students? Whoever wants to answer first about what criteria did you use to determine academically talented students? Gloria, I see you smiling.
So yeah, it made me smile because I would say that, of course, a 3.0 out of a 4.0 scale, but in one of the reviews that we received when the first proposal was rejected was that, well, maybe the students couldn't excel in high school, so to speak, because they had to go to work, etc. So maybe we can lower the GPA a little bit to like 2.8 and just see them excel because they're an S-STEM scholar, and because of that they're doing much better in college. So we actually looked at the GPA and more or less like a personal statement, what they want to do after they get into peer review and when they graduate.
Laura, what did you use for criteria?
Yeah, very similar. Our GPA is quite a bit lower. We went down to 2.5. Now, I don't think we have awarded to anybody at that level because of our applicants, but that we asked for a personal, a very small essay describing how this is going to impact their life and what they want to do with their life. And then we also asked for referral. We asked for the contact of somebody who could speak to them, be it a high school or a college teacher.
Mark and Mindy, have anything to add?
I think it's kind of just ditto for us. It was pretty similar to what has already been described. One thing I would add is, as you think about the academic criteria for the scholarship, it's common to have they have to keep a certain GPA to stay in the program. And I think, that makes sense, but it's helpful as you're thinking about your proposal and your project think about what sort of like probation plans you might have in place, because you don't want to cut someone out as soon as they drop below a certain GPA, especially if they've only had, maybe a year under their belt and there's only so many classes going into that GPA. And so how can you work with the student to develop a plan? And then as long as they're showing improvement, then, maybe they are able to maintain the scholarship.
Question that was upvoted that I feel is just kind of a yes, no, that maybe I'll direct to you, Mindy, because it's kind of more in the weeds. Do you need to submit a bio sketch for your evaluator as in part of the proposal?
Yeah, this would be true across NSF programs, or at least any of them that I'm familiar with. If you have an external evaluator, it's good to have that bio sketch, which usually goes in as a supplementary document. The bio sketches for the project team, senior personnel and co-PIs, PIs, that goes in research.gov, there's actually specific upload spots for the personnel. Then there's this whole other supplementary docs bucket. And so the evaluator goes in there. I think you can add supplementary docs that don't use the template provided, but you'll want to use the template that's through the Science CV website that people are supposed to use for their bio sketches. I would still ask the evaluator to go ahead and follow that template.
Is it true that the bio sketch no longer shows synergistic activities?
Yeah, that was a change again NSF wide, and it's PAPG, the PAPPG. It's kind of like the syllabus for the NSF that describes everything, and so that was NSF wide. It used to be you could list, I think, up to 5 synergistic activities as part of your bio sketch, but that's now been pulled out. And as far as I know, there's still no like template to use for it. I think most people are just kind of using a Word document or something, but you can Google and find examples of what institutions are using for that document. That's what I did anyway.
And when we're kind of related to this nitty-gritty stuff, do you know if there is a page limit on supplemental documents?
Not that I know of. And I've seen a lot of supplementary documents submitted for some of the big, especially the big collaborative proposals. But just to not drive your reviewers and program officers crazy, you'll want to not have too many, I would say. So limit yourself to some degree. But I don't think there's a policy for that.
Thank you. Someone asked, is there an expectation that faculty mentors are remunerated for their time mentoring?
We provided a small stipend for the extra work. And we did separately provide, well, maybe there's an overlap. We do have some stipend / salary offset for the PIs and co-PIs who also serve double duty as mentors.
We provided some funds to buy research supplies for the research mentors. They didn't get any salary compensation, but they can at least buy some supplies for the students, the research project that the student is engaged in.
Thanks for that. Do you have something to add?
I was just saying, I think ours is similar to Laura's, where a lot of the mentors ended up being on the main project team, so they're getting, through those roles, they're getting some sort of extra support or course releases. But we do have our research mentors for that 4-week summer experience, and they get an extra stipend for each student they mentor in the summer.
Mark, we have a question about your grant and how do you do cohort building? Excuse me. How do you do cohort building across campuses in various regions of your state? And how far apart are your institutions?
So University of Central Florida and Orlando, which is in Orlando, and University of South Florida, which is in Tampa, they're hour and a half drive apart, probably an hour and a half drive apart. We're farther away. We're more like 3.5 hours from Orlando. In the first time we had the grant, which started in 2016, really the cohorts were more, each university kind of had their own group, and then we would maybe have one time a year, we would have kind of a virtual symposium in which the groups got together. But in the middle of that grant, we had that little COVID kind of thing crop up. And we realized a lot of the activities that we were doing individually in each campus that we had to move to Zoom really could be shared. And so in the second grant, we're more focused on many of these activities are now Zoom events, which also makes it easier to get attendance. And they involve all the universities. So for instance, we might have an alumni panel where we bring in some of our scholars from the first cohort, or even scholars that have graduated in the second group in our new grant, and they talk to the students about their experiences, and those are pretty much our most well-attended events because our students really relate very well to the alumni, and I think we know probably as parents that kids don't listen to us, but they listen to their friends and people that are closer to them. So those kinds of events have really materialized. We have a graduate school event where we have the graduate program directors from 3 universities each give presentations about their grad schools and their different programs that they have. That's another well-attended event that seems to have helped move more of our students into grad school. So I think that's some of the strategies that we can use in the modern day.
Thank you. So sort of related, we have a question about, does anybody use incentives to get students to attend events or summer programs? And if so, how much were those incentives?
I can start with this one. Our main 2 things that we have are a transition week before their first semester starts, and then the 4-week summer research after their first year. And we compensate them for both of those. They get a stipend and housing and food stipends for those times. For the other events that we might have throughout the year, if we just have a gathering to let people get together, across cohorts or something, we just provide food and hope that that's enough of an incentive.
We don't have any activities that would provide that. We do have some money for internships, but that's really not part of the support of the cohort.
Thanks for sharing about that. So somebody has a question based on looking at the new FAQ document that the S-STEM program put out. And this person says, I looked at the changes in the new FAQ, and as I understand it, we can reach out to campus organizations that predominantly support underrepresented populations of students, such as student chapters of NSB or SACNAS. Is that correct? I believe this is for recruiting, right? Okay, do you have ideas about that, Mindy?
Yeah, the one of the things with S-STEM, and again, who knows how stuff may change in terms of recruiting from specific populations. But what has been in place, and I think what the FAQ is trying to describe, is in your recruitment, you can target certain groups, student organizations. You could recruit from specific high schools or regions or areas, anything like that. But once it comes to your actual selection criteria, you cannot select students based on minority status, gender, any sort of demographic thing like that. It has to be, are they in an eligible major? Do they meet your academic criteria, and are they low income? And do they have unmet need?
Thanks for that clarity. So someone else asks, how can we help students with food security issues, which was something mentioned in the solicitation, if you're not allowed to use grant funds for food?
I'm I'm curious whether your college has a food pantry or something like that. And, you know, I will say a big part of what we were encouraged to do, actually a big part of our description when we were writing the proposal had to do with how we're going to, I think, use existing resources at the college to support our project and support our students. And so I don't think this directly answers the question, but you know, part of what we've really tried to do is work with the students to make sure they're aware of resources such as the food pantry. And then also hoping that the scholarship funds, I believe the intent of that really is to relieve some pressure on the students, enable them to focus on their college life and their degree more than they're having to focus on outside work, and that helps too. So it's not a direct answer, but we really do try to get them to meaningful resources within the college or the community to help with those needs.
Thank you. Mindy, were you gonna add thoughts? I saw you unmute.
I think Laura covered a lot of what I was gonna say. Yeah, if your institution has food pantries or other services, talk about that in the proposal. You know, the scholarship is supposed to go towards cost of attendance, and so, you know, hopefully that helps a lot. But I would also say, and this differs based on, I think, different institutions have different policies about it. But even though in general the NSF does not want lines in the budget to go towards food and meals, there isn't an exception for that when it is for cohort building activities. And so there are S-STEM projects that are able to include that in the budget, because it is part of the program is cohort building and those supports. And then again, you know, especially if they're doing anything outside of their regular, I would say, meal plan kind of time, like a transition week or summer stuff, you can include food stipends as part of participant support. Not part of the 60% scholarship, but other participant support.
Thank you for the clarity, very helpful. We have a participant who's interested in doing a planning grant. Do any of the panelists have tips on effective ways to use this time, this planning grant time, prior to going for a Track 1 award? First of all, I'm not sure, have any of you had a planning grant? No,
I have not. I'll say that what was in the old solicitation, there was a specific planning grant option written in that was specifically for Track 3s, the interinstitutional consortia. That's been taken out. Now NSF still has just a basic planning grant description in that PAPPG document that would be you know, something that people pursuing S-STEM projects go for. I would say for Track 1s, now there is a planning time built into those grants. And so that's one of the changes that came about in the newest solicitation, that you're supposed to take the first 6 months to a year of the actual Track 1 project and finish that planning, whether you're doing needs assessments or developing relationships with the offices across campus, or figuring out whatever you still need to figure out before you actually recruit students and bring them in. And so it's really kind of built into the new track one for this solicitation.
Thank you for pointing that out. That's a major change to the track ones this year. We have another question about the evaluator and social science researcher. Can they be co-PIs or should they be senior personnel?
I know in my proposal, the researcher was a co-PI
Hmm.
and the evaluator was senior personnel. I think it was required back then for the researcher, the education researcher, to be a co-PI.
Any other thoughts on this topic? I believe the evaluator has to be external to the project team, is that correct? But the social science researcher, especially if you're doing track threes, right, they could be a part of the project team. And could they potentially be a PI then, a co-PI? Yes, I mean, yes, for Mindy. Here's another question about a potential change in the requirements. So in the past, you needed to include all previous S-STEM grants in your proposal, list them. So this question is now, do you only need to include the more recent S-STEM grants?
That's a good question. I'll start off by saying I'm not positive about the answer to this, but I do know previously you had to list, and so every proposal has a prior NSF support section. Normally for the NSF, you're supposed to describe projects that you've been involved in, PI, co-PI, or senior personnel that, or maybe it's just PI, co-PI, that were within the last 5 years. For S-STEM, that was any project at the institution. Now I know, I think that may have changed, because at least for track ones, you used to not be eligible for track one if your institution had ever had an S-STEM or STEP grant before. And now I think that's changed to just within the last 5 years. And so maybe reporting on previous grants has also changed, but I'm not positive about that. I think there was a kind of an understanding that it's sometimes hard to report on projects that happened a decade plus ago, because those people may not even be, still working at the institution. So yeah.
Yeah, I'm not sure about the answer to that as well, but that makes a lot of sense given the change that it's what matters is the last 5 years to be eligible for a track one. Thank you, Mindy. Someone here is curious if any of the panelists has had a similar experience as them. So a reviewer last year asked them for a plan for replication. Have any of you addressed this in your successful applications? Laura, you're shaking your head no.
No, we were not asked that.
Mark or Gloria or Mindy?
Yeah, I don't think there's a requirement for that. You do want to talk about sustainability of your project as much as you can, which can go sometimes hand in hand with replication. But this might be one of those times where, you don't necessarily have to respond to every individual reviewer concern. Look for themes.
Maybe instead of I lost the word. replicability, we do talk about sustainability, but also scalability for institutions that are a little bit different than us.
Thank you. That was very helpful. We have a question about unmet needs. When discussing unmet need, can we account for the scholarships or state funding that is available for Pell eligible students?
Yeah, when you're looking at unmet need, you'll want to keep in mind that S-STEM is a last dollar scholarship, and so all other funding, when you are considering your pool of potential scholars, should be included first, and then S-STEM fills the gap, if you will. And so if Pell eligible students in your state get other grants through the state or through the institution, those should be included in the formula as their other financial aid. The unmet need is once you take their families, it used to be expected family income, now it's SAI, student something something, student aid index maybe, and you take out the other financial aid they receive, whether it's Pell Grants, whether it's other scholarships, whatever it may be. Unmet need is what's left over from cost of attendance, which includes tuition, fees, books, transportation, housing. The institution defines what that number is, but it has to be publicly posted. So you should be able to easily find what your institution's cost of attendance is. And then the other thing I would say about scholarship amounts and unmet need is you'll want to try to calculate an average unmet need for your potential scholar pool. And you can use that amount to estimate the scholarships you would give out to, the average student and what your cohort size should be. But once you actually get students, if their unmet need ends up being higher, up to the 15,000 for undergrads or 20,000 for grad students, you meet that unmet need. So maybe you budgeted for $10,000 per student, but there's a student that needs 15, they get 15. And so you have to meet them up to the maximum amount, which could mean you end up with smaller cohorts, and that's okay. You don't have to have the exact number of students that you originally wrote in if the unmet need changes.
Thank you. We have a AAAS related question that I can answer about the scholars meeting. This person asks, is there a max number of students that AAAS can support to your S-STEM scholars meeting? And is there a requirement that they prepare a participation product to be eligible? So we don't have a given max number of students that we can support. What we do is try to be equitable across all of the projects. So there are, over 600 S-STEM projects active throughout the country. And these projects, have different numbers of scholars engaged in their program. We're aware of that. What we do is when we open up the call for nominations, we'll say nominate up to X scholars, whether in the past we've done up to 3 scholars. And then we give everybody that chance to fulfill those 3 slots or however much we think we'd be able to support across all of the equitably across everybody. And then what we do then is if we have open slots, we will allow to have more scholars from the waiting list join us. So in the end, it ends up being different numbers of scholars from different programs, but that's very much based on 2 factors, which are space and which are the number of scholars kind of engaged in that program, because some of the S-STEM programs might only have 1 or 2 scholars that they're supporting, and then another program might have 10. And, it's kind of, we don't have set limits, but we try to be very equitable across all of the programs to make sure we have as wide of a representation as possible across the active S-STEM awards. There's not a requirement that scholars prepare a product to be eligible. That's why we have the nomination form that we have, and we are trusting, since you all are working with these scholars, you're the ones who know them well and say, yes, I think that this scholar would benefit from engaging in the meeting, and you put them forward, and we take your word for it. They are welcome to present posters of their work there. We found that this is very popular amongst scholars because it's not judged. It's very much a foray into learning how to present your work at a scholarly event or conference. So the pressure is off, and it's a very supportive learning environment where they can practice their elevator pitches and their presenting of their STEM work. So it's not required, but there is an option for students to present work. Hope that helps. And a question for the panel: how big are your cohorts typically, and what is the average scholarship that you pay for students? Someone's curious about this.
We specify 6 to 7 per cohort and a max of 8,000 a year. But as was mentioned earlier, if we have extra money, we're glad to take in more students. Tara, could I share something real quick about our results before we run out of time? It'll take just a sec. Again, we are a small college. We just started our 3rd year. We've had 15 scholars total. And so far, out of that 15, 7 have finished their degree. 5 are on track to finish. So that gets us up to 12 out of the 15. 1 dropped out and 2 changed their majors. And I did not pull up the typical graduation rate for 2-year colleges, but wow, it's not nearly that. So this has really made a difference at our school. So sorry to take time for that.
Thank you for sharing, and kudos to you and your program. We'll allow the opportunity for others to share. So Gloria, how many scholars do you have in your program, and the support you provide to them, and any sort of outcomes you'd like to share?
Oh, yeah, sure. We give a maximum of 10,000 per year. The average is about 5,000. We got our grant, I think, 3 months before the pandemic. So we're like, oh my gosh. I mean, yeah, recruiting was hard. And so we ended up getting a couple of students outside of Texas. And so we actually had to really work with the institution to get them tuition fee waivers. So that was cool. I mean, we really had some good support from the institution. So they didn't have to pay out-of-state fees, and they didn't have to pay, we can afford to just give them, well, not just give them the 10,000, and they were good. Yeah. I'm excited. We were supposed to be 10 students per year for 2 years, so a total of 20 students. Turned out that a couple of the students who we brought in during the pandemic here, during 2020, they changed their majors. They changed their majors to from chemistry to chemical engineering. And because there was a former S-STEM in engineering, they weren't eligible because we were looking for students of chemistry, physics, math, and biology. But we have had 6 students graduating. 1 is in medical school, 1 in vet school, 1 would be going to grad school, and 2 others are taking a gap year, and will be going to medical school. So I'm excited.
Thank you for sharing. Mark, how about the STEM scholars that your program supports?
Yeah, so since our grant was in the 2021 cycle, we were also capped at $10,000. Right? The limit was raised, I think, a year or two later. We were told we couldn't go, retroactive or anything, or get the new numbers. So it's up to $10,000. I think on average, I would say our students started around 8,000, but it seems the last year or two, it's been creeping closer and closer to 10,000 for reasons not entirely known yet. We have about 15 to 20 students per university in each cohort, and they're expected to be supported for 2 years. Some take a third year because these are juniors coming in. Some take a third year because some take a third year, especially in computer science. Many students do internships and things like that in the middle. And we also support students if they continue on to graduate school and at any of the 3 universities. And we've had quite a few students take advantage of that. And they're allowed to be supported up to a total of 4 years in the old grant. I guess now it's 5. So like Laura, we've seen graduation rates for the students that are far above what has been typical. Not quite 100%, but far above what's been typical. So graduation, retention, and pursuit of graduate school and employment, all that. The program obviously has been very beneficial for our students also.
It's so wonderful to hear that STEM program is making a difference. And how about at James Madison, Mindy?
Yeah, our cohort sizes are 11. We're supposed to have, we have 2 cohorts. We brought in the second cohort this year, so it's still kind of early for, a lot of retention data. We have lost one student that had lower grades, but also decided to switch majors to an ineligible major. The other students that we have lost and are going to lose, which kind of, it surprised me how many, we're losing a number of them because they are losing their Pell eligibility status. And so we are just no longer able to give them the scholarship. And so that has been a higher number than expected, especially given that a lot of our students are getting the max 10,000 that we were allowed on when this project was funded. And so we're going to have lower retention rates just because of the change in Pell eligibility status.
And we've also had some students that lose status or their NEET gets lowered because they get other sources of income, especially at our universities. They've been more aggressive in trying to find scholarships for all students, but even in those cases, we continue to invite them to all the activities and things like that, and we still count them in measuring our graduation and retention rates. They're still considered retained, even if they're not financially eligible anymore, as long as they're still retained academically in the university and in the degree program.
Thank you so much for sharing your insights and your thoughts and some information about your programs and your knowledge of the solicitation as well. We're out of time for questions, unfortunately, but please check the answered tab for answers to questions that were not voiced. Thank you all for submitting your thoughtful questions. Thank you also for crowdsourcing some answers in the Q&A. Thank you. I see that and appreciate that as well. A big thank you to our panelists, Laura, Gloria, Mark, and Mindy. And we want to remind you today to please provide your feedback by taking this short survey. It will be emailed to you tomorrow if you don't have time to take it today, but we really use your feedback to help us improve our events. Thank you in advance for sharing our thoughts. And one final note, it's great to connect with you all today, and we encourage you to keep in touch with the S-STEM Rec. Visit the Rec website, explore our resources, sign up to receive our monthly newsletter, help us build community by interacting with us on social media. Really appreciate your participation today and your thoughtful questions. We look forward to engaging with you in future Rec webinars and activities. I hope you have a wonderful rest of the day and best of luck with your S-STEM proposal submissions. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, panelists.
Bye.
Bye-bye.